Welcome back to another episode of Sal and Pal's Go to the Movies. I'm here with my friend Touly. Say hi, Touly.
Hi, everyone.
And today we're going to be reviewing Toy Story 4. And just a fair warning, there's going to be spoilers up ahead, so you've been warned. When a new toy called Forky joins Woody and the gang, a road trip along old and new friends reveal how big the world can be for a toy. Let's just name the cast once again. For Woody, we have Tom Hanks. Buzz Lightyear is played by Tim Allen. Bo Peep by Annie Potts. Forky is Tony Hale. Ducky is played by Keegan-Michael Key. Bonnie is played by Madeline McGraw. Gabby is played by Christina Hendricks. Bunny is by Jordan Peele. Duke Kaboom is played by Keanu Reeves. Giggle McDimples is played by Ali Mekki. Jessie is played by Joanne Cusack. Dolly is played by Donnie Hunt. Rex is played by Wallace Shawn. Ham is played by John Ratzenberg. Slinky Dog is played by Blake Clark. And we have Mr. Potato Head being voiced by the late Don Rickles. We'll touch upon this a little further ahead. So let's get started with our review. I gotta say that some of the things that happened before this movie kind of made me feel a little worried about it, especially since Rashida Jones left Pixar. She did not leave because of the unwanted advances by John Lasseter, which a lot of people have speculated. The reason Jones said that she left was just due to philosophical views. My thing is that I would really want to know what her story plot was versus what we saw on screen. Was it almost the same? Was it a little different? And I know that she cannot talk about this due to a gag order. Maybe in the future this gag order is going to disappear or something, but it's just kind of an interesting thing for me to think about. What could this story have been, or was it along the same lines? So just to let you guys know, she was also credited in the movie, even though she did not partake up to the end. Also, John Lasseter was also given credit for the movie. With that, we're going to move on. Some voices in this movie, we actually lost some people before. We've lost the voice of Slinky. But then in this one, we lost Don Rickles, who died in 2017, and he was the voice of Mr. Potato Head. But the studio actually worked around and used his old recordings to give him a new voice in this movie. And this was due to the family who wrote to the studio and asked them to do that. So I think that was kind of nice of the studio to do, to kind of do an homage to him by using all his other voices from video games, movies, and even the theme park to recreate a new dialogue for him in the movie. The movie for me was amazing. It captivated me. I enjoyed it, and I think kids would really enjoy this movie a lot. But I couldn't get this feeling off that this was a reskinned version of Toy Story 1, 2, and 3. And it just basically bugged me throughout the movie. But as a studio, I can see what they're doing. They're targeting the kids, giving them this imaginary world where toys come alive. And when I was in the audience, I kind of got that feeling that kids were really enjoying themselves, because every time they saw a toy, they'd be like, oh, yay. And, just screaming like with joy. Parents who were sitting there would also get a kick off of old toys, or basically homage to these old toys that would have, like, for example, Duke Kaboom. When we were kids, we had these toys. I'm not saying we had the actual Duke Kaboom, but we had things that we would just wind up and just make them crash, So a lot of people, when they saw that, they gravitated towards that, especially Gabby, which was basically a classical doll that people would pull her string and she would talk. And I think she is an homage to a real doll. I don't remember the name right now, and we have a bunch of jokes in the movie, given by Ducky and Bunny. We also have other funny characters involved in this movie. But the main story revolves around Woody and Bo Peep. And I think for me, that was like a callback to Toy Story 1, where we saw Woody and Bo Peep getting kind of friendly, kind of acting like they were dating, but they never speculated they were actually dating. I think that's basically how I'm going to leave it off, and I'm going to touch upon this a little bit further on later, but I'm going to throw it to Touly and see how he saw this movie.
To be quite honest, when the first teaser trailer or tease, whatever you want to call it, dropped for Toy Story 4, I was very concerned from the perspective of how they were going to handle this film in a way that wouldn't jeopardize how good the Toy Story franchise was up to that point. I definitely felt, even some people would argue, that Toy Story could have ended probably at Toy Story 2 and you would have been satisfied with how things concluded. For me, Toy Story 3 was the one that brought everything full circle, because those films, the first 3 films that is, those films focused around Andy, and I felt that he was, even though Andy was in a lot of ways like a background character, he was the glue or the motivation that drove these characters, these toys, to do what they did, and how they wanted to be played by Andy, or how they wanted to come back to Andy if one of the toys were lost or what have you. So everything revolved around Andy. And when Andy gave the toys away in Toy Story 3, it made me realize the gravity of the situation, because I've been through that myself. And to me, it was sort of like me going through my moments when I used to, play with toys in the fashion that Andy was, and just growing up and having to go to college or just other stuff that comes about in life. And when I saw that happen on screen, I was like, yeah, this is a pretty satisfying and reasonable conclusion to the tale of these characters in Toy Story. And then once, Bonnie got Woody and Buzz and the whole gang, I just thought, okay, it's pretty much gonna be this whole Andy cycle again, where she's probably just gonna, play with the toys, and she's gonna go off doing her own thing later down the road, and then these toys are gonna get either handed off or something's gonna happen to them, and they're just gonna go their separate ways or whatever. That's the end of that. We sort of get the idea. So that's where my concern with Toy Story 4 was, because I didn't know where they were going to take this tale of the characters to sort of downplay how meaningful their roles were in the prior movies and how it built up to that moment. That was my concern. Now, having watched the film, I can say, and again, it's arguable. It's up to you to decide how you feel. I'm always, being respectful of how you feel about whichever film of the 4 right now that currently exists within the Toy Story brand is quote unquote the best. But for me, I would say in terms of favorite, Toy Story 4 is my favorite Toy Story out of the current lineup, because it sort of goes along the line of the narrative, in that because we have already we sort of realize what the cycle is going to be for these toys, because we saw what happened when these toys were in Andy's possession, that I didn't focus too much on that. Yes, Toy Story 4 did focus on those aspects with Bonnie, and we could see it throughout the film, but I was more interested, and Sal pointed it out too, that this film was more about Woody and Bo Peep, particularly Woody. So I just focused more on these characters, these toys, not just for just being toys, but who these characters were, and seeing the struggle that Woody went through, the behavior, the reason that he was trying to hold on so tightly to what he was doing, despite not being played with or not being in the light anymore, because Bonnie had this fondness for this toy that she created in class, aka Forky. And I'm also glad that they didn't take 2 steps back here with Woody in terms of him, I wouldn't say feeling jealous or feeling pessimistic about the situation. We already saw these moments of Woody in some of the prior films and how he reacted, particularly with the introduction to Buzz Lightyear. We saw how he acted to Buzz. So I'm glad that he didn't go back to that stage of his life. Instead, he saw it from like a more reasonable perspective, and I appreciated that. But again, going back to the whole idea of the narrative already being sort of played before, I'm glad that this film took maybe some chances, or were more willing to be creative in certain aspects of the film to elevate it to a level that maybe didn't exist in the other 3 films. It could also be the fact that because I haven't seen the last 3 films in a while that I feel this way too, but for some reason this film had certain creativity in it that they had to maybe explore in order to get the audience to buy into the film. And this creativity, of course, latches onto, culture references, comedy, and things that, in terms of like the audience, the kids would appreciate, but at the same time, the adult would appreciate too. And like some of the comedy of this film, as sitting in a room where it was probably like half children watching the film and have adults watching the film. You know, there were certain scenes that you could hear some of the kids laugh alongside the adults, but there were certain times where it was only the adults laughing because the kids didn't get the joke. And those were the moments that made me laugh out loud, really, to be honest. And I don't recall in any of the other Toy Story movies that made me laugh out loud that many times throughout the film. Again, I think it's just the creative freedom that went into this film because they didn't have to rely on retelling something that already happened to Andy in Bonnie's situation. And because of that, they get to do whatever they sort of wanted to sort of tell the story that they wanted to, you know, on top of it. I think because of that, I sort of gravitated toward Toy Story 4 that much more, along with the messages that was conveyed through the characters that were being showcased throughout this film. And that Woody was willing to put his sense of duty and responsibility over some of the things that he really wanted out of quote-unquote life. I mean, it's sort of hard to imagine that for a toy, but again, we're trying to see this from the perspective of these toys being characters now in the film, and he desires something. You could easily saw, even like in the first 10 minutes of the film, whatever, with the whole demise of the Bo Peep situation where Bo Peep got sold off, and Woody really wanted to go with Bo Peep, but he wanted to be there for Andy as well. And I'm glad that Bo Peep understood that too, so they ended up not being together. And at the end of the film, it sort of led to that moment again, and Woody was hesitant yet again because he was going to put his sense of duty from what he wanted. And so I guess this is where maybe certain people didn't like what happened, but I appreciate for what it was, for what the story that they were trying to tell. And I thought they did a great job at telling the story and convinced me that, you know what, maybe it was time for Woody to hang up the old sheriff hat, pass the torch to Jesse, and live his life, what he wanted out of life. So I thought the message was really, really great, and I think something that even in life itself, you know, people can relate to. Like for me, definitely I can relate to something like that, where you have to put responsibilities over what you want at certain times of your life, and you have to kind of choose, you know, what you really want. And I guess, you know, Woody eventually got what he really wanted at the end, despite the years that he was trying to, in a way, protect his family, the family that he grew up with, not only the owners of these toys, but the toys that he came to appreciate and become his friends and family. Yeah, there's a lot of things that went into this film that I really, really like, and I could talk a lot more about this, but I would be rambling at that point. Not to say that I'm not even rambling right now, but like I said, this film, it really, really shined in a lot of ways. And if I did have one complaint about this film, it would be because, like I said, the film focused so much more on Woody and how some of these other characters were just more of a supporting cast, that characters that we normally got a little more airtime of, we didn't get that much. That these other characters only had a minor role in very particular situations, particularly during like the RV scene towards the end of the film where they were trying to prevent the father from driving the vehicle. I thought it was pretty funny for what transpired, but again, these characters had so little role because they were just sitting around waiting for Woody, waiting for Buzz, waiting for Jesse or whomever. If I had one complaint about the film, it would be about that all these other characters were just lying around. But at the same time, in order to have told the story that they wanted to tell, I felt just like Woody that this was a sacrifice that they had to have made in order to do what they had to do in the film. And at the same time, they did introduce new characters as well. So in a way, maybe it balanced out that we got to see these other characters and how they brought a new face to this series that maybe we weren't familiar with from the other three. Particularly with the villain in this film, which was portrayed supposedly by Gabby, because she wanted to take this sound device from Woody that allowed the string, if you could pull it, and it would play a recording of his voice. But Gabby, she also had this device, but the device inside was broken. So she wanted to replace it, and they wanted to get this device from Woody and replace her broken piece. The reason she wanted to do this, she's very understanding in doing this too. She talked to Woody about this. She approached him and said that, you know, Woody has experienced all these great moments in his lifetime, being able to create these memories, and yet she hasn't because she was broken at the beginning and nobody wanted to play with. From her perspective, you kind of gravitated towards why she was doing what she was trying to do, and it made sense. Like, you felt sympathy for her. And so again, Woody was willing to sacrifice that piece of him and offer Gabby that opportunity as well. And then we saw what happened, and that elevated the movie again to another level, because Gabby didn't expect what to have happened. The girl who she wanted to have her played with, she got rejected by that kid. In that moment, moment, all the adults, in the theater, they were just awestruck, and they saw it coming too. I wouldn't say that it wasn't something unexpected, but when it happened, you just felt for Gabby. In the end, she wasn't a villain, but she sort of portrayed that at the beginning because she was after something that Woody had in him. Again, like so many things going on. I thought they did a really great job at creating a universe in this Toy Story 4 film that could have gone south really fast. But the amount of effort that I saw on screen, it just really showcased everybody's effort from, the actors and actresses to everybody off screen. Kudos to everybody who was a part of this project because they really hit it out of the ballpark.
I totally agree with you. This Toy Story, to me, felt like it was Toy Story 1, 2, and 3 all wrapped in one. Let me get into this theory that I have why you feel so passionate about this one. I want to say that it's a condensed version of the trilogy, the 1, 2, and 3, put together and gift wrapped, so you feel all these feelings that you felt throughout 1, 2, and 3, but at one time. For example, we have Gabby, who at the beginning portrays an evil character, or we see her as an evil character, like in part 2, Stinky Pete, the prospector, and in part 3, it's Lotso. So in this one, Gabby takes the form of that person that is kind of the evil doer, at the beginning, which later on in the movie, we get to understand and feel sympathy, like you said, towards her. Now, let's go and talk about Forky. Forky plays the role of Buzz from Toy Story 1 and Jessie in Toy Story 2 as the new person in the gang, as the new toy, as the person they need to help to understand how, kids get to play with toys, and this is what the purpose of a toy is, to get played with. So Forky in this one, he's a new character, but in reality, he's a new life because Bonnie created Forky out of trash, so we see it, but at the same time we do see that certain things don't necessarily have to be a toy for a kid to actually be played with. For example, personal experience for me is that I have my nephew. He has toys and everything, but normally he'll just gravitate toward this object that is not a toy, and he'll just act like it's a toy, and he plays with it more than he plays with most of his toys. So in a sense, it's like the kid's imagination is playing alongside with this idea to make Forky a real life toy. And we see that everybody's like, well, she created a toy, and this is a concept that the toys have never heard of. She made a friend. No, she really created a friend in Forky, and she did it so she can feel easy, and the same way how Woody sees that he was a comfort toy for Andy. Now Bonnie is using Forky to basically adapt in school and stuff like that. So I think this all plays into this whole compacted trilogy in one. And that's how I feel when I went to see this movie. But other people might see this as a cheating way, that they just reskin some characters to make us feel nostalgia. But at the same time, for me, it actually kind of fits. And like I said, I really want to see Rashida Jones had a separate script or something and just compare it. But at the same time, this movie to me was a well-rounded movie, and it had all the things that we wanted, especially Easter eggs. We had Easter eggs that people saw everywhere. One example of one Easter egg that I'm going to point out is Boo from Monsters, Inc. You can see her behind Bonnie in the kindergarten orientation where she's creating Forky. She passes behind her. It's a really small glimpse, but it's another character from another Pixar movie. But I agree with Touly that this story was just focused on Woody and Bo Peep, mostly on Woody, and just reliving the things that we never saw him do with Andy, when he was a kid, that's why he's looking and trying to protect Forky and just to make Bonnie happy. He's taking a step back and saying, okay, it's your time to shine, Forky. Because of that, we lost some other characters that we didn't see. And like Touly says, they were just put in once in a while just to basically key points, just to keep the story rolling. But to me, I would really appreciate it if they would basically focus on the whole gang instead of just two characters mostly. If you didn't have the other characters, then why even put them in the movie? Give them their fair share. You added new characters, so give all the old gang some time to shine. But overall, this movie to me was a perfect Toy Story 4, and hopefully I don't want there to be another one. I think this was a perfect ending. After Toy Story 3, I think this is kind of a good spot to leave this franchise in. So with that, I'm going to ask Touly for his final grade of the movie.
Yeah, so just like Sal just said there, I definitely could see this being another ending or the ending to Toy Story, because we said goodbye not to an owner of these toys, but we said goodbye to the face of Toy Story, and not in that deathly sort of way, but it's one of those bittersweet goodbye where Woody just, he hung up his hat, gave the sheriff badge away, and he's gonna go do his own thing now. Even if you didn't see this film, Toy Story 3 could have been a great ending to this series, but this one just takes it to another level and focused more on the toys and who they were as characters. So again, a lot of things that I liked about this film. Yeah, easily it's going to be a 9 out of 10 for me.
The same with me. I'm going to give it a 9 out of 10. And here's the thing. I'm not saying that this is the last thing that we're going to see of Toy Story. I'm saying it's hopefully the last film, because with Disney Plus, I can see a short series coming out where it takes place and follows Bonnie around, or vice versa. We follow Woody and Bo Peep on their adventures throughout the world. So kids and parents, don't worry. Maybe this is what Disney is planning. They're going to go from movie to a series, and Disney Plus is a good format for them to take this adventure along with them. So that does it for this review of Toy Story 4. Please join us next time when we review Spider-Man Far From Home.
Get on the jet! Who are you? I work with Spider-Man.
You work for Spider-Man?
I work with Spider-Man, not for Spider-Man. New plan!
Click that like and subscribe button, leave a comment below, and remember, keep watching movies.